I love modding Rimworlds. I love the quality of life changes that I can access through mods. I love the new gameplay aspects I can get from all new mods and allowing the creative flow of modders to be implemented into my game. And most importantly, I love breaking the Geneva Convention, introducing Brian's Missiles, a fantastic little mod that has been recently uploaded that I thought this allows me to do all those things all at once. Let's get into this review and start with the content. So as we start looking at the content provided this mod, let's look at our first impressions, the Steam Workshop page. What is it like? Well, there's a lot of lovely pictures here. The thumbnail at the beginning tells you pretty much exactly what's in the mod, and the rest of the mod page looks just like a lot of pictures. There's nothing wrong with images, and I think it's a really helpful thing for mod creators to do with their Steam Workshop page. However, I feel like we need a little bit of description for each of these items, not just a picture and a little bit about them. I want to see just a little bit more writing, but overall, it's pretty good. So what is added by this mod? Well, we have access to 11 new items, a missile launcher and 2 components to actually make the missiles, and 8 missiles in total. All of them with different abilities that are somewhat similar and somewhat different at the same time. All of you to be accessed through the machining table in order to make them. So before we get into looking at what the missiles actually do in game, let me tell you how this works. So basically, it's a mix between transport pods and mortars in the base game in a sense that you select what missiles you want to put in it, and then you select the tile you want to launch the missiles at the same way as a transport pod does. So it works basically on any tile that you have access to in game, so you can do intercontinental ballistic missiles and go from there basically. So for example of what I mean, let's show off by the very first missile we're going to do. The smoke missile does exactly what you think. It provides a smoke screen. So what you do is you select your missile launcher, set it to a target. For in this case, we're just using the map that we're using on, exactly like a transport pod crash. You'll then fire it manually and you'll wait for it to come down and then smoke appears. This is the smoke one. As you can see, there's a very large area this affects. This is a trend that you will see as we go on. Next, the EMP, and once again, and there's a very large area effect once again. Next, the toxic missile, and once again, thud and boom. Wow. There is a lot of fart everywhere. This is kind of like placing a Discord moderator right in the center and it just farts. It's disgusting. For example, like look at this rabbit here that's kind of on the edge and it's taking a lot of toxic damage here. If you land this directly on a target, they're going to be dead if you wait long enough. Next, let's start looking at the actual things that we're really interested in, the explosive ones, the ones that go boom and make our ears go all funny. Starting with the normal explosive one, and there is a lot of damage here. Immediately incinerates that animal. Poor thing. This is pretty tame, I'm telling you, after we see the next couple. Next, the incendiary missile, and thud, and boom. There's just nothing left. It incinerates everything. Wow. This one's, I wasn't expecting the radius of this missile was to be as much as it is. Brutal. So the last 2 missiles I've shown you, the explosive and the incendiary, have got huge amount of damage potential here and they've got a very large radius. The next I want to show the high explosive one, the one that you kind of think, oh yeah, it might be a little bit bigger, but holy shit, this is insane. Please, nobody tell Vladimir Putin about this mod, because you know your boy is taking inspiration from that. These are brutal. Like, I've got no other words for it. Next, we have the impact missile, and unlike the rest of the missiles that are added by this mod, this one has no countdown before it explodes, so the thud is instant and then a big boom, leaving no help or any chance for any survivors. And then last but not least, the piece de la resistance, the anti-grain warhead missile, the nuclear bomb that we all know and love. How good is it? Well, it does what it says on the tin. Big boom! Oh, it's so satisfying to watch. The ring of fire, it's perfect. It's literally like me after a really spicy Indian. The Vindaloo doing me a Vindapoo. You know how it is. This one is very impressive. I love the fire and everything. It's just perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So there we are. That's all the content added by this mod. And where am I at with this? Well, I think the Steam Workshop page needs a little bit of improvement. Love the pictures, but maybe want to see some written improvement for it. The missiles themselves, I love them. I think they are perfect. We'll get more into some of the issues that are facing with the individual missiles later in this video, but overall, I love them and I want to just see more. For content, I'm very happy giving this a 8 out of 10, only being marked down for its Steam Workshop page, and I just want to see more missiles, honestly. And that's about it. Next, the quality. So next, let's look at the quality. Now, what I'm kind of expecting here is that everything looks good and it's all unique and it fits the kind of mass destruction vibe. So the start with the missile shell that's added by this mod, it looks very nice. It's a nice little addition, actually. I'm very impressed by it. but the missile component's kind of letting me down here. It's basically an advanced component that's been on the beach for too long. It's a little bit tan. I'd like to maybe see a unique texture for the missile components, just something that really separates it from base game. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like too much effort's been put into that, but that's about it. Then looking at the actual missiles themselves, they're all color-coded and stuff. You can see from a glance what is what. I very much like that from my mods, and as I've seen in previous ones, this is a really effective idea. Maybe I'd like to see the colors a little bit more bold, a little bit more in your face, so you can really see them from a very quick glance. And I think the textures of the missiles themselves could be improved a little bit as well. Other than that, no issues at all. And then looking even further into the quality, I'm really happy to see that when you actually go to launch these missiles, like with the transport pods, they kind of appear and they stand there and they look all happy to see you. I like that. It's a lovely little touch there from the mod creator. He could have just had it so they just go up in the air, land again, and you don't even see any of that, but we do get that interaction there. Fantastic. So I think overall for quality, I think that it definitely needs improvement in the actual textures of the items by the mod. It just needs a little bit more love put into it, and I understand that this, you know, isn't the biggest deal in the world, and I'm zooming in very far with Camera Plus, but in my opinion, we just need to see a little bit more in terms of the quality there. So I think for quality overall, I'm very happy giving it a 7 out of 10. The groundwork is there for some really good looking stuff, but we're not quite there yet. Next, let's look at the balancing. Now, over the time of doing these mod reviews, I've learned a few things, a few tips and tricks of the trade, you could say. A good balanced mod is based on mainly two things: time and resource cost. First, let's look at resource cost. So first for resource cost, let's look at the missile components and the missile shells. Now, every missile component requires 50 steel, 10 plasteel, and 4 components. Pretty expensive if you ask me, and every single missile requires 1. And the missile shell just requires 100 steel flat. So already we're looking at a minimum cost of 150 steel. Generally, that's quite expensive just for one missile. So next, let's look at the resource cost of the actual missiles themselves. Now, the first one we're going to look at is the anti-grain warhead one, the nuclear bomb, which is arguably the most expensive by a long shot, requiring 2 anti-grain warheads. Now, in base game, which is where we're going to be comparing all of this, it's virtually impossible to get anti-grain warheads. Now, that's good, because the nuclear warheads and the nuclear missiles are extremely powerful. That's how I like it. That's how it should be, and I think that's very fair. Now, it does make this extremely hard to access within the base game, and I will be advising some mods later on in this video, but for balancing, that makes perfect sense. The rest of the missiles, however, they are generally quite cheap. Once you get past the initial cost of the missile component and then the steel, it's all pretty much just some chem fuel, and that's about it. Generally, pretty cheap once you get the base level stuff, which does make sense. Once again, the common sense balancing is kind of there, I gotta say. So for resource balancing, I'm generally quite happy with it. It all makes sense, it passes my common sense test. Next, the tech cost. The tech cost of this is only 1,000 research points, and that's it. For something that you can literally blow up somebody and like commit literal war crimes with, it's 1,000 research and then some components and resources, and that's it. I feel like we need to sort of separate things out and maybe have a different level of component added by this game so you can access different missiles at different tech levels and separate out the more powerful ones and go from there. I definitely feel like it needs to have the missile spacer components maybe be a separate tech level and it require fabrication just as a little bit more late game. That's just me, you know? In certain situations that doesn't really matter, and a lot of things you aren't going to be able to access until these later stages because of the resource cost, but at the moment, tech cost feels a little bit low, that's for sure. Next, let's look at the damage balancing. Now, here I have one colonist that is wearing cataphract armor, and I'm going to directly launch a missile onto him. Note that he is wearing a shield belt. So this is a high explosive missile, lands next to him, bonk, and then he survives. Absolutely fine, not even a scratch. Whilst his shield belt has been completely ruined, there's no damage actually done to him. This doesn't seem quite right, and I had questions, which leads me on to my next test. Now, the next test, in my opinion, was very simple for me to conduct. Now, as we saw there, the shield belt pretty much protected this man from a literal missile launched by Trident, and it's obliterated him, right? He survived with no scratches harmed. So what I did was I took the shield belt off, I used a actual just normal explosive missile, and I saw what it did. Thunk, and he dies immediately. Shield belt OP, perhaps? So which leads me on to my next test. Now, the next test is very obvious, an anti-grain warhead. You know, we go from small explosive to literal nuclear bomb. Makes sense, right? So what I've done is I've given him back his shield belt, which seems to be all-powerful and all-knowing, and he dies straight away. I will add here though, in a previous test that I did with this, he actually survived this. I wasn't actually able to recreate that within the time frame I was given, and I'm unable to show you proof, so I mean, take that how you will, believe me or not, but with the shield belt on, you seem to be able to negate pretty much all damage done by these explosive missiles. A small change somewhere in the code needs to be done, I don't know, but shield belt's definitely a little bit OP with this mod. So the last test I wanted to do for the balancing was compare the stuff in the base game compared to the stuff in the mod, and the regular explosive shell that's in the base game is a 3x3 square, wildly inaccurate but very, very cheap to produce in comparison to the stuff added by the mod that does a massive area effect, but is very, very expensive in terms of resource cost in comparison. So there we have it. In terms of balancing, this mod generally performs pretty well. In terms of the actual common sense and the resource cost, it makes sense. It's all more expensive and it's actually kind of hard to get compared to base game vanilla Rimworld, which is what we'd compare things to. The tech cost is low. I'd like to see this raised, and I'd maybe like to see a separate missile component added so we get a little bit of separation between the slightly lower level missiles compared to the higher level ones. And then comparing the actual damage, this shield belt seems to be just negating all the damage, and I'm not sure what's going on there. There's probably something on the technical side there that's doing that, but that shouldn't exist. The missiles generally are extremely powerful, as we saw the regular explosive one blew up a man in cataphract armor like that and disintegrated him practically. I think for balancing there needs to be some work done here just to really perfect things, but generally speaking I like explosions and I like that I can access them fairly easily. I'm going to give balancing a solid 6 out of 10. It's pretty good, just a little bit more is needed. So next, let's look at the compatibility. How will this work with your playthroughs, and are there any bugs I need to let you know about? Now, going through the Steam Workshop page, there were no bugs that I could see that are reported. Everything seems to be working smoothly, and in my experience within the game, I had no problems either. Now, I'd imagine that because these are based off the transfer pods, if you have issues with the transfer pods in any regard, you might have some issues here or there. That's only my thoughts about it, no facts behind that. Then how will this work with your mod packs? Now, funnily enough, the missiles and nuclear warfare and total just obliteration of other people, this won't work very well in a tribal or medieval era playthrough. It does limit it slightly to only industrial and above, but it will fit in perfectly within those eras. I'm definitely going to be recommending you guys to run a fairly heavy mod pack with this mod. I think this fits really well with mods that like Rimmerfella. I think this mod will fit in really well with Rimatomics and things like that, and some more compatibility within those mods, and it will be perfect. I think for compatibility, I'm very happy giving it a solid 8 out of 10, only being let down by the fact that it doesn't work in the medieval nor the tribal era. Next, let's look at my mod recommendations. Now, obviously, I can only really recommend things that are industrial and above, so let's start with mods that reflect that perfectly. Start with a quarry mod so you can get absolutely all the resources you need to build all the different missiles and everything without any issues. Your Shanker's biological warfare, which is actually compatible with this mod, that gives loads more missiles. Anti-grain continued, so you can actually make the nuclear warheads, because who's going to say no to those? Rimmerfella to access the chem fuel really easily and an absolute massive production of it. Then perfect for industrial era stuff, AOBA's industrial fortifications mod, so you can just add more stuff for that. I think mod recommendations are always going to be a little bit more niche for something that like this, because it only affects the industrial and above eras, so you do kind of miss out on those areas. And I think for a more passive playthrough, a more story-based playthrough that you might be doing, it doesn't really fit in with those either. I don't know why, but mass destruction and stories kind of don't maybe blend as well as we might like to think. I think for mod recommendations, however, I'm very content at giving it another 8 out of 10. Once again, only being marked down by the fact that it doesn't fit in with medieval nor Neolithic sort of playthroughs. Last but not least, my conclusion. So in conclusion, where am I at with this mod? I think this is a great mod, and it's a fun addition to missiles and everything, and it makes breaking the Geneva Convention even more fun within Rimworld, and who's ever going to say no to that? For content, I gave it 8 out of 10, quality 7 out of 10, balancing 6 out of 10, compatibility and my mod recommendations 8 out of 10 each, giving it the grand total score of 37 out of 50, which is a very solid B rating. Now, I think unfortunately the balancing does let it down here, and I think the balancing is a very important part of this mod, and I do want to see it changed. The tech cost specifically for me is a little bit low, and I would definitely like to see the anti-grain warhead stuff made a little bit more accessible to players, whether it's by adding a recipe to make anti-grain warheads or such, I don't know. But I think this mod is so close to greatness, it does just need that little bit of refinement, which the mod creator can do definitely within time provided. So I think I definitely would recommend you guys to go check out this mod and formulate your own opinions of it. So if you have enjoyed this mod review, make sure you like, subscribe, and make sure you tell your mum about me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.